Dr. Barry Davis, welcome to the Fearless Warrior Pod.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to finally get to connect with you in person. And as always, everyone kind of laughs because this is my shtick on the podcast. I just need to hit record, having amazing conversations. Let's just pick up right where we had left off. Tell the Fearless fam, who are you? Where are you at? What are you doing these days?
Okay, I am Dr. Barry Davis. I am a former college head baseball coach of 35 years, 38 years total. I have a PhD in sports leadership. And after 35 years of head coaching, I decided to get out of coaching and pursue speaking, writing, consulting, uh, other coaches, other leaders. And I wrote a book, and the book was published in June of 2025. The title is Old Dog New Tricks: The Power of Leading with Emotional Intelligence. And the emotional intelligence aspect is probably the tipping point ingredient on what I feel is separates from the great coach to the elite coach is that one little bit. It's like the salt, that little ingredient that you can add to what you already know, your competency, the character level that you have, the standards that you have, the leadership skills that you have, which you need to have all those. Which I learned, working on my PhD from 2014 to 2019. So I spent a lot of time researching and writing and reading and learning about elite coaches, elite leaders, and how to transform, poor performing organizations or programs, athletic programs, and basically transform them into cultures of excellence. And they were able to sustain that culture through, I would say, the foundational pillars that I discovered through my work, and and also was able to implement a lot of that into my coaching in I would say the last 5 years of my coaching, which you could argue were my most successful, not in terms of wins and losses or accomplishments, but just how my relationship with the players, was stronger, which I felt like I got more out of them without getting um, too authoritative and becoming more, of an autocrat, type of coach, which a lot of people still are. And I felt like I gained a lot more power by relinquishing the power and having to know everything and do everything. Hired some good people, had some good coaches with me, let them do their job, and it became more fun. Whereas I think as a younger coach, it was always fun, but it was only fun when we won. Now, when we were to lose, we'd look at it differently. Like, these are the things that we need to improve on. These are things that losses, failure identifies things you need to work on. Now, we don't want to lose a lot, but it's okay to lose so we can identify them, so we can improve on them, so the losses can be reduced and the wins can be increased, and the enjoyment of being a part of a team and building and building and building, which is the fun. I think that's the joy of coaching, is being able to take something, mold it, get it like you want it, and to excel. So that's the long version, I guess, of where I'm at, and I'm happy to be here and share some of my ideas.
And I love that you brought us on that journey because in 35 years, you've learned a lot. And now you're in this next evolution of your career of helping other coaches not make the same mistakes and really looking at the last 5 years. And, I've got your website pulled up. And for those of you listening, I mean, we're talking about a Hall of Fame coach here that has reached the championships and has reached the wins and loss column that every coach dreams of. And what I'm hearing you say loud and clear is it was just more fun when you started using more of what you're learning about. And I wrote down, you gained power by relinquishing the power. I would love for you to go deeper into that. Let's just start with that.
Well, I think, the first thing is that you become more of a listener. You try to listen. You understand that I understood that I was the head coach and I was the CEO in essence. And I needed to look at myself, I know, almost like step out of my body and say, okay, you're in charge, you're the leader, and carry yourself like the leader without having to be loud, without having to act like you know everything. One of the four words that I think you could put in, you could use for the rest of your life is, what do you think? Like, what do you think about this situation? What do you think about how we're playing? What do you think we should do today? What do you think we did today that wasn't good enough? Asking a player, what do you think we need to do to get you better? How do you want me to coach you when situations where I may not be as thrilled or happy with your performance or the way you're carrying yourself? What are the solutions? What solutions do you have? You tell me the answers. And then I just felt like it built more trust. It gave them autonomy and empowered them to do things that they could do on their own without me overlooking them. But I also felt, if I were needed to step in, I could do it with a calmer, more soothing way to get my point across. And I think that even though you felt like you felt like you didn't have to be so micromanaging in charge to get them to do what you wanted to do. You could get them to do what you wanted to do by asking less of yourself. I just felt like it just got easier. It's kind of a weird dynamic because you're afraid to give it up because if you give it up, you feel like you're going to lose it. But I didn't lose it, and it made for a safe environment. And then when if you're working somewhere where you feel comfortable and you feel someone believes in you and you feel supported, you can do great things. You can do great work. You could do better work. Whereas opposed to where you feel like somebody's always looking at you, you're always being, critiqued, and every little thing you do is going to be um, criticized or graded. So I just tried to be the best leader I could, set the best example that I could, and to be patient, stay calm, be steady. And again, you had to kind of fight it sometimes because you could feel it inside your body. You're warming up and you're getting frustrated, but then you just deep breath. Realize that you're in charge and people are looking at you to be calm in these tough situations. So I had prepared myself for practices and games to try to stay in the moment, be calm, be cool. And then if I was, they were. And I just
Yeah.
felt like I could get them to do more without me having to ask for more. I asked less, got more.
Which is so
And
incredible because where were you 5 years ago? I felt like as a coach, we can speak to our experiences of it's very apparent of this new generation of athletes where it's easy to say, well, that's not how I was coached.
right.
We would never dream of having the conversation with our coaches about playing time like these players are. And they want to be involved. They want to feel like they're heard. And so, I think about the times that I really was transactional as a coach because I felt the pressure to, hey, my job as a coach is to correct you. But if all you're ever doing is criticizing and correcting, it makes sense why they're shutting down versus when you're asking them. I wrote this down. Your four words is, what do you think? And the temptation is, if I ask a kid what they think, I'm no longer the expert. And you're saying, that's completely opposite of you're getting their buy-in and you're having that conversation together.
And I think it's hard. And I think it was easier for me because I had built up a decades of success. And I mean, I'd had, some failures. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can't win them all, but I felt like I had done enough. This is where the experience aspect comes in. A young coach, is going to have to overcome that because he's fearful of not being able. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't won any games. When I got to Ryder, I had won championships. So even though I wasn't as emotionally intelligent as I was at the end, I wish I was. But I had built up enough credibility to get him to at least, do what I asked because I've seen it work. Whereas at the end, even though I was still being successful, I just, I guess just the way you carried yourself, because when you're around people when they're uptight or when they're nervous or when they're stressed or when they're feeling the weight of the world. I don't think I ever felt that. And in the biggest games, I felt less. I mean, I felt like, hey, let's go play. And we're ready. We're ready. Trust me, we were ready. We practiced. Do you agree or disagree? Yeah. What do you think? There you go.
There it is.
We're
What do you
ready.
think?
We're ready.
Yeah.
You know, I think so too. So let's go do it. So there's like this fine line between like, I think where you feel comfortable in letting go a little bit and then not letting go. There's that line. And usually it comes with your own confidence in yourself. I was a lot more confident in my abilities later on in my career than I was at the beginning. I was more insecure because I needed to win to prove
Yeah,
everybody that I was a good
we're
coach.
hired as a coach. You're hired to win. We're hired to coach. Coaching means criticism. Coaching means depth charts. Coaching means tough conversations with the kid where you do have to give them constructive criticism on where they're not, you know, meeting the
Right.
bar. So before we hit record, we were talking about the 90s and the paradigm shift and how we were coached isn't how, if we continue on that path, and I know you talk about it in your book, but let's just start with, ground zero. How do you define emotional intelligence?
Um, well, I mean, there's been a lot of research, in the field, and I sort of take the coaching aspect of it outside of just the normal day-to-day emotional skills, being self-aware of how you feel. There's a mood meter that we used online. Dr. Mark Brackett, he runs Emotional Intelligence Center at Yale, and he had this mood meter, and it certainly defines what your mood is, like what my mood is right now. Like my mood is, I have high energy right now because I'm excited, and I'm very pleasant. I'm pleasant. I feel good. I'm happy. So I'm kind of in this quadrant of, you know, I'm excited. I'm fulfilled. I'm happy, you know, whereas the opposite would be low pleasantness. I'm not very pleasant, and I would have low energy, which would be like depression, really down, and maybe not vocally, showing it, but being really like blue in a sense. And then there's that red, furious, we're high energy, but you're really unpleasant. And I spent a lot of my coaching career early in that quadrant when things didn't go right because I felt like I needed to do that to get them to do more. If I did that, then I would be happy, but and I would sometimes, don't get me wrong. It happened a lot. I would push them. But overall, the idea is that you're self-aware of your mood that day. Some days you don't feel good. Some days you don't feel like it, and you're less tolerant with things that don't go well. When you're not in a good mood in the car and you get in a traffic jam or somebody cuts you off, your reaction sometimes is different as opposed to as if you're in a good mood, you're not in a hurry. You're feeling, you're pleasant. Um, you're calm. You're cool. Everything's good. And then somebody cuts you off, you might not, freak out or get upset, right? Because of how you feel. So being self-aware of your actual mood at the moment is you want to determine how you respond to events. And then, I know you'd mentioned Brian Kane earlier, E plus R equals O, event plus respond equals outcome. So if your mood, I just tried to keep on a steady pace. And that way my mood wouldn't fluctuate too much and it wouldn't cause me to react with a negative tone. I would be more patient. So self-awareness is number one. So you got to be self-aware. Two would be self-control and self-regulated, being able to control your emotions. Like when something happens, just, you got to be able to hit pause and not react with a negative side. Now, sometimes, you're not happy with something, but anybody can get angry. Daniel Goleman, who's considered the father of emotional intelligence, said, getting angry makes smart people stupid. And I always remember that. I'm like, that makes so much sense because it's easy to get mad. It's very difficult to stay calm. So you got to learn that. So self-regulation would be something that I needed to work on um, a lot. And I've done a very good job, in my opinion, over the last few years being able to regulate it. Now, the third area is motivation, persistence, grit, the ability to keep at it And I think that's of all the attributes of what emotional intelligence, how they define it, that's the one I was actually really good at. I could persevere. I was motivated. So though that quality, I think I was so good. I want to say so good at it. That's where I excelled. It overcame the self, yeah, awareness, self-regulation areas where I wasn't very good because I was always still trying to push and to get better.
Push.
So I'd always outwork the other person, or I felt like I was always going to have to outwork them. The fourth one is empathy. I mean, I say this in my talk. I come from a family who has the worst hugs in America. We are not a hugging, loving family. I mean, we might be a little bit more now. My mother's in her 80s. She's still alive. But when I was growing up, it wasn't, I love you. Here, give me a hug. It was, I'm going, I'll see you later. It was none of that. It just, I'm proud of you, but that was it. There was no physical love, touch. Well, I knew they loved me, but it just wasn't that way. You know, I think my dad hugged me once in my life, and that was when I graduated college. I knew he cared about me and he loved me and he took care of me, but there wasn't that empathy um, in that fashion where it was hugs and kisses and making you feel safe. So I grew up that way. So how can I be that way? So I had a difficult time with my players listening, caring, touching. I mean, I had to basically learn that, and I'm much better at it now. A matter of fact, I'm probably really good at it. I mean, I've probably seen half dozen of my old players, and we hug each other. We tell each other we love each other. But that did not happen, and I think it was mainly because of the way I was brought up. And then the last one is just social skills. Being able to read the room, being able to it's kind of your emotion, your emotional smoke alarm. Like when you go to practice, you can kind of see that somebody's not with it today. And I would say that would probably be number two for me behind motivation and grit and perseverance is I kind of could feel that because I was always looking around to see what I could observe with the players and with our mood and with our tone. So I was pretty aware. I was aware when I was younger, seeing kids that didn't fit in, and I noticed that. So I was always pretty good with that. But empathy, self-regulation, and self-awareness, those are bottom feeders for me, and needed work. But it came. It came because I intentionally and deliberately tried to be better in those areas. But those are the five, and then you add the emotional intelligence total to the whole package of coaching. Leadership and consistency and communication and high standards and growth mindset and getting the right people around you. You add the emotional intelligence to that, and you're cooking with gas. Then, now we can rock. And
Right. And
that's it.
like you said earlier, that's when coaching becomes fun.
Yes,
It's supposed to be fun.
right. And you get into it because you love the game. You get into it because you love the competition. You might get into it because you really don't want to work, because I never considered myself working, even though it was hard work. It was always fun to get up in the morning. And when I was working on my book, it was always fun to get up and type and try to create something that someone could learn from, which I
Yeah.
think I
The
was able to
passion.
accomplish.
Yeah. When you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Well, you can't be good at anything if you don't love to do it.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Well, so I want to go back in the conversation. I would love to hear what your former players have said to you of, well, coach, you've changed. Do you have any stories of that?
Oh, yes. I mean, you wouldn't believe how he was back when he coached us. He was crazy, and nuts. I mean, and I guess I was. I mean, I was overbearing. I mean, it was every little detail, anything you made, if any mistake you made, I mean, I was on it. And that wasn't a bad thing because I was teaching and coaching constantly. I think it was just my delivery. But I was able to get them to play, and we were talented, and we probably overcame some of my deficiencies because we were. Um, Maybe I wasn't as bad as I thought I was because I feel like I'm so much better now. But if you got them in a room and said, okay, what's your best Barry Davis story? They would not have to go very far to find one. And everybody has one. I'll give you one story
I would love a story.
that I use. We're coming back from a game, and my assistant coach, Rob Balley, who's now the head coach at South Jersey at Gloucester now, doing a wonderful job. And so we're driving vans, and I looked down on my leg. Somebody had either threw a piece of ice or spit a piece of ice. It landed on my leg, and I just lost it. So I pulled the car over on the New Jersey Turnpike, the van with my team, half of my team in this van. There was another half of the team was in the van behind me. They pull in behind me. I get out of my van. Cars are, it's on the turnpike. It's about 7 o'clock, in the spring, kind of dusky. And I make the guys in the back van get out and start running down the shoulder of the New Jersey Turnpike. So
In
I'm
your
dri
van.
and well, the people in my van are just still in my van, and no one's saying a word because they're scared to death. Because now the van in the back, which was doing, I mean, I don't know what they were doing, but they didn't throw a piece of ice up and hit me by accident. I know they didn't mean to, but I just lost my mind, and we're running down the highway. The state police pulls up behind me, and their lights are on, and then I stop, of course. And he says, you got to get them off the highway. And I said, well, I'm just trying to teach them a lesson. He goes, I know, okay, but get them off the highway. Now, he didn't give me a ticket. He didn't yell and scream. He was emotionally intelligent. He was calm. He's a
And
state
when
police.
can we pause this story? What year was this?
1997.
Okay.
So that's almost 30 years ago.
Hmm.
So I get him back in the van. But think about it. That what was I mean, there's cars. I mean, imagine driving down the highway, down the New Jersey Turnpike at 65 to 70 or 75 miles an hour, and there's 12 guys running down the shoulder, and they're not in the road, but hey, what if a car, I don't know, blows a tire? What if somebody runs up behind? I mean, think of the tragic, oh my God. I mean, what am I thinking? I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking. Instead of me just saying, instead of just stopping and pausing and catching myself and say, listen, we'll deal with it and I get to the next stop. I just reacted immediately.
Hmm.
And that's probably one of the stories that comes to mind. Like, what were you thinking? Because you weren't thinking. And you know what? I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I don't
Right.
remember going home that night, sitting in the bed going, oh God, I'm going to get a phone call from my boss tomorrow. It's going to be somebody's going to be complaining, or a player's going to go home and tell mom and dad, and they're going to go call me. I didn't think of any of that.
Well, and you're going to double down. I mean, the story that you're telling me right now is I can think as a young coach with a chip on my shoulder. I have plenty of those stories, maybe not on a highway, but where if I was called into my AD's office or called in by a parent, I'm going to double down on my decision because I didn't have the self-awareness to put my ego aside because I
Right.
thought that it was the right decision. So this absolute, I mean,
I didn't.
self-awareness and
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, there's multiple other times where and most of it involves some type of conditioning or some type of running, and this went on for a while. I mean, later on in my career, I mean, I knew that this was a situation where I would do something like that, and I might, instead of running the young man or conditioning the young man or making him physically, you know, making him physically uncomfortable.
right.
I might just say, listen, we got to come up with a decision here on what to do with you. What do you mean? What would you do if you were me?
Oh, you asked that. When it
You
comes to
know,
disciplinary, this is the what do you think
you're like, okay,
framework.
you just mispracticed completely. What would you do? Do you want to miss? Should I suspend? What would you tell me? There's a lot of things we can do here, and
What do they
well, depending on who they were, they may say, I won't do it again. I trust me, coach. I'll never do it again, and never say never. And I'm like, look, if this happens again, we're going to suspend you, for a game or multiple games, something to that effect. They may say that, or they may say, coach, just run me. I'll run something. They would come up with it. Okay, well, why did we get to this spot? Why are we at this spot? Like I've sent guys home and they get there late for practice multiple times. I listen, why don't you just go back to the dorm? You think about what you're doing here and decide whether or not you want to be committed to the program without me raising my voice and then I think we've had guys go sit out in their car and then meet me after practice and apologize.
That's
I
almost a
mean,
bigger punishment than running. I mean, it's more appropriate. And then like I'm thinking about situations where the brevity of that mistake, it makes them own it more because instead of us being enemies and I'm making you run, now you're owning your mistake and now you have 2 hours to stew on it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it becomes the biggest thing I think I learned at the end was, or at the later on, the last third of my coaching career was that I didn't need to get worked up to make my point. Um, Maybe I thought I had to because I wanted to make sure they knew I was upset. Um, but yeah, I think, not discipline, but like there's consequences. And if we don't get it straightened out, the consequences are going to escalate. And we need your commitment to the program. And a lot of this is laid out right from the get-go, right from the start, day one. I mean, day one meeting, first day meeting, first day, first one, and to be consistent with the way you're going to handle yourself within the culture, what's expected of you. And I had to do it. Like I had to be when I got to practice, and this is honest God truth. For 35 years, I can probably count maybe on one hand when I got to practice and I didn't feel good about being there. I loved coming to practice. I mean, that was the one thing that I think that, I made sure for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. When I was younger, it was like 3 hours, or, there weren't any rules back then. We didn't have any 20-hour work weeks. But
Right.
at the end, it was 2 hours. I said, look, we're going to go for 2 hours. I need you focused, committed to this 2 hours. Now, if I needed to keep you a little longer, I would let you know. Say, hey, tomorrow we're going to go a little longer because we had some bad weather or because, we're a little behind here. Do y'all understand that? And most of them, yes, yes, sir. They would never really, some of them, yes, sir, no, sir, but they would agree. And then the next day we would maybe add an extra half an hour. But, I was consistent with tried to be with my communication and tried to be there um, with the right mindset. One of the things that my wife Brett, who does mental performance, and you do it as well, and it's important is self-talk. So I even today, self-talk for me is still important to talk to myself to get myself mentally ready to be my best. Because it's a long day, you get down on yourself and things are, you're not selling enough books or you didn't get the speech that you wanted, or whatever. There's always something to try to keep you motivated. So anyway, I started to walk to practice and I called it a self-talk walk. So on my way to practice, I would basically say to myself how good of a coach I was going to be that day, how patient I was going to be, how calm I would be, how much of an example setter I was going to be. I was going to teach, I was going to do all those things that good coaches do. And then when I got to the gate and walked in, my mindset was that way, and that went a long ways for me. And I would highly recommend that to anyone listening to this when you are walking to practice or walking to class or walking to a meeting or whatever you're doing to get yourself mentally ready to go, that mindset of being excellent and talk to yourself. And it's almost as if, you stood a little taller, your chest got out a little bit, the big body language, as they would say,
Yeah.
And I think I did that, and I did that on a daily basis, and it became easier to be a good coach, to be a better leader,
Yeah.
all that. So
And when did you start implementing the self-talk walk?
I would say 2021 or 22.
So recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had about a quarter mile walk from the office to the field, and it was like soothing in a sense. I mean, I
Oh
would
yeah,
write, I
all the
don't have,
noise. Yeah,
yeah, I
we're just
mean,
inundated with noise and podcasts and texts and
right. I mean, I would write, I don't have my hat with me, but I would write inside of my hat, teach, be patient, lead, calm, be the best, whatever. I mean, some little
yeah.
things. They would be written all inside of my hat, so I would look at my hat a lot of times. And if things got hot, I would always have water near me, so I would like take a sip of water. It was almost kind of like I'm cooling myself off, like, all right, calm down, and I would take a
Yeah.
sip,
Well,
and then I'd put the cap
it
back
begins
on.
before it begins.
What's that? Yeah, yeah. So it was, breathing. I know breathing's big in mental performance. It's like take a deep breath, relax. I mean, it's always going to work out. It's like, at some point
Right.
it'll eventually work out. So I tried to stay calm. That was one of the big things.
I love all of this because as a mental performance coach, I think the value in this and until this very conversation right now, the teams and the coaches that I'm consulting with, it had never occurred to me that yes, we're teaching mental skills to these coaches that then want to teach and implement and carry these mental skills into their practice plan. You're saying I'm using these mental skills myself.
Right.
That this is like a whole new conversation. I'm going to have to text all my coaching friends and all my teams that I'm working with because what you're saying is I am choosing to use self talk. I'm using a reset mechanism. I'm using all of these. And going back to what you said, is the last 5 years are the most fun 5 years of your career because you started showing up differently.
Yes, and I feel like even though I'm not coaching now, if I were to go back and say, okay, I'm going to put all my emphasis on coaching, I'm better now than I've ever been. And the book, which is right here, is really a mentor leading a coach on how to improve his emotional intelligence skills and how to lead a group of young women, which is what it is. It's a women's basketball team that's struggling, who now has this highly volatile coach from years past where he just couldn't control himself, and now he has a mentor who's showing him that look, you're going. First of all, this is the last job you're going to have, so we got to make some changes. And he vows to listen, and he does. And then they build these emotional skills through the season, and the team improves. And there's all these team things that happen all the time. There's always someone not working as hard as they need to be, and there's always somebody who's a really hard worker or a great leader. And now we're trying to bring the people that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing up to the level that the best players are playing at. And as a coach, you are performing. I had a conversation with a coach once, and he said, I hate when someone asks me, "Are you ready to go?" He said, "Yeah, I'm always ready." I mean, he said it as if I don't need to be ready; they need to be ready, my players. And I didn't like. I mean, again, I didn't get into this debate about it, but you have to be ready. You are performing too. Like you're the coach. You are an actor on the stage, just
Yeah.
like everybody else. So you got to be ready. And I think if I'm ready and they see that I'm ready, the chances that they're going to be ready are going to be even better too. I'm ready. I've prepared. I mean, I've prepared to handle the bad things, the good things, whatever. But yes, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. I would never say, don't ask me. It's the players that need to be ready. Well, I'm going to prepare the players, but I'm also going to prepare myself and get myself ready to be able to coach the game at the highest level possible.
That's great advice. I want to go back to coaching because I'm immediately, I mean, I can think of times where I'm sitting on a bucket frantically writing a lineup, and the umpires are saying, coaches, like, and I'm still writing my lineup and I'm so focused on the X's and O's of the game that those were the games that I felt like my emotional intelligence was probably a very low scorecard because I didn't do the things that we're talking about right now. So, what advice would you give to coaches of like, is it a self talk walk? Like, and obviously read your book, learn about these five. Do you call them pillars?
Well, the five pillars are kind of trickled in and out, but the five pillars that when I wrote my dissertation, because you can get my dissertation if you go on my website, you can actually buy my dissertation, and you can just download it in a PDF. The five pillars are leadership and leadership development is number one. That's the most important. Two is consistency and consistent communication. Three, it was high standards expectations. Four, it was the right people, the right fit. And five, it was the growth mindset. Now, those five pillars are derived from 9 interviews with nine talks to elite baseball coaches who transformed their programs into winning and sustainable champions. There were 7 national championships within those 9 coaches, and the other that didn't make it to the national championship have played in multiple regionals or been a part of championship teams at different levels. But these were all Division I coaches at Power Five schools, with the exception of 2. So 7 Power Fives and 2 non-Power Fives. I mean, one was St. John's, still high level, and the other one was Coastal Carolina, who had won a national championship, even though they weren't a Power Five or 4 at the time. So those pillars were basically founded on the information, the qualitative study that I performed with those 9 coaches. So I just didn't pull them out of the hat
Right.
or read a bunch of things and say, okay, this is what happens. I coded it. I went through the interviews. I transcribed everything, and that's what I came up with. And it's a pretty sound foundation. And all five of those, if you take all five, they're not mutually exclusive. So you got to have them all. You can't have just one or two or three. You got to have all five. Because if you pull any one of those five out, you're not going to be successful.
You've got a leaky bucket.
And I mean, the one that well, what about growth mindset? Well, eventually somebody else will continue to learn and evolve and get better, and they'll beat you, and they're going to be more successful than you are. The right fit, even though it's 4 on the list, I still put that one pretty high because you got to have the right people, but your expectations cannot be low. Your consistency has got to be there. Routines, I mean, routine. There's no surprises. The communication has to be sound, clear,
Hmm.
great clarity. And then leadership is you're basically setting the example and you're doing the right things, handling yourself properly, great ethics, and just do it, just being above board on everything, above the line versus below the line.
Right.
And if you don't fall into one of those areas, if you start to slack off and you're not very consistent, or your communication starts to fail you, there's mixed messaging, there's going to be problems. And then throw in that emotional intelligence aspect, and if you have all that, we have a really good chance of being unbelievable, unstoppable, as Dr. Rob Gilbert would say. We're going to be unstoppable. And so the book is basically a story about a program rebuilding, but a coach rebuilding himself to become more emotional intelligence with leadership up from above that knows what it takes to win, and he knows what it takes to be a high level people skills person. And in the book, I use the term gold medal people skills. I mean, he's the guy because he has the experience. He has failed, but he knows how to do it. So it's kind of a twofold story in program transformation. If you're a coach out there who wants to learn some techniques that are not X's and O's, it's not X's and O's. There's some, but it's basketball. So, but you can apply these principles to any sport: softball, baseball, football, soccer, lacrosse, whatever, any team sport. And there's some
Yeah.
there's some individual tools, how to handle an individual, but for the most part, it's a team building book too.
And what a gift, because I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with, I got to do a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And what about this? And it's like you have gathered this research to be able to say, look, it's these 5 things. And if you can handle these 5 things at a really high level, we get this tunnel vision of what really matters versus just, I felt like sometimes when I was coaching, I was throwing spaghetti at the wall of like,
Right.
I got to get my pitchers, the X's and O's, we got to get the pitchers, the hitters, we got to get everybody grooving. And it just, sometimes I think it gets overwhelming as a coach because you feel the pressure of the X's and O's.
And the other key term in this whole thing is it takes time. I mean, you can't, I mean, you can fix it. If you can make a program, you can improve a program in 1 year. But the overall building and sustainability comes with consistency and long-term building. You know, you can't practice every aspect of softball, baseball, football in 1 day. Just like you just said, you're trying to do everything. You get just little pieces put together with pieces and pieces and pieces, and eventually you start putting those pieces together. It's like a big puzzle. And then at the end of the season, when it comes tournament time, that's when you need to be your best, and that's when all the pieces need to be there. And some years it's still not there because you don't win the championship or you don't get to the finals. But you see it all the time, how these programs are built. They get there, they just miss. The next year they get a little further, then they get a little further, then they get there, then they win a Super Bowl, or then they win a World Series. Now it's changed a little bit with free agency and
Yeah.
NIL and all that. So, but the premise is still there. It takes time to build, and that's the fun part. But that's where you coach, you make notes, you reflect. Big word, another big word that needs to be thrown in there is reflection, self-reflection, day to day, well, better, how,
Yep.
stop, start, continue. These are all in the book.
Yeah, so good. So I have a question that I've been gnawing on, and this is real. We're gonna go real deep on communication for a second. I would love your advice as a coach. I would love to hear what you did specifically, and then the 9 coaches you interviewed. One of the things that's been coming up with my one-on-one clients, especially in the college space, is there's 2 types of coaches that I'm seeing that are wreaking havoc on the mental performance of an athlete, and it's shocking to me, and I'm very curious to hear your answer. There are coaches that wait until literally 15 to 30 minutes before game time or an hour before game time to announce the lineup. And then there's the coaches that will announce the lineup the day of or the day before or the week of like, hey, here's my game plan. And I realize writing a lineup can change, but what did you do as a coach when it came to lineups and preparing your guys for what lineup you had built?
Well, what I've learned over the years was that my best teams basically played the same guys. Like once we got going, like I knew Scotty Shaw was playing left field. You know, our center fielder was Richie Sick. Our right fielder was Brendan O'Donnell. I mean, that was almost every game. Eric Hartman played some out there. But let's just use those three as an example. Shaw left, okay, Sicka center, O'Donnell right, every game. Now, if I were going to make a change,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell. Now, if I made it like really early, maybe I found out O'Donnell got sick, that morning, he couldn't feel good. So then we would, handle it right then. But if I knew I was going to make a change before the game, I would do it the day before, or I might do it 2 days before, only because I would say, look, we need to get Eric in the game and we need to work him in, and you be ready to go in for defense. I'm going to move O'Donnell to center field. I'm going to play Hartman and right. Uh, and that seemed my communication and that fact that did the best. Now, if it was a day before, I might say, look, we're having a midweek game. We're gonna move some guys around. We're going to change catchers and you're going to catch and you're going to do this. And then I would let everybody know the day before. But, and I also sometimes would not tell a kid he wasn't playing. I would switch it like right before. Like I had a catcher one time. He would always catch game 2. But when we got to game 2 at Oklahoma, I didn't catch him. But I didn't tell him. Now I should have told him, but I didn't tell him. So I just kind of said, okay, let me just see how he reacts.
Hmm.
He reacted so bad. And I talked to him afterwards. Said, "Look, it's my fault. I should have told you, but also you have to understand that why we're catching him. But I also want you to know that you can't react that way. You're playing. It wasn't like I pulled you out of the game. You're still hitting. You're still DHing. But as soon as I put it up on the board, I sat back and watched him walk over to that board, which proves to me that you got to communicate those things out in front. You got to stay ahead of that. and just understand. Say, look, you bring him in and say, Sock. Sock was his nickname. Sock, come here. Listen, we're going to catch Brian all 3 games this weekend. This team really runs. I don't think that you're now. Hey, you don't have to be you agree, but I'm just telling you that's why we're doing it. But I need your focus in the game. You know, um, because I think switching it without communicating it and out without telling them why you're doing it can cause harm, because then they start to question, well, what do I do? And then they start looking over their shoulder about, not playing well, that type of thing. So there's a lot of psychological things you can do in the fall or in early season practice. Say you have a guy that he thinks he has a couple bad days, he's not hustling, he's not producing. Maybe you move him to the second team without saying anything to see how he reacts. Maybe he goes, you know what? I need to pick it up. And then he
Mm,
starts to pick it up. So
yeah.
it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on who you have. Um, I think you just have to be aware and of your team and understand. And you might tell them at the beginning of the season, say, look, once we get our lineup, we're going to probably stick with that lineup. And I stuck with that lineup. I mean, you can go back and look at the box scores. We very rarely changed it. But here's what happened at the end of the year. Our center fielder was not playing real well. One of my seniors came to me and says, Coach, we got to get him out of there. The guys on the team have no confidence in him. So I said, okay. So I went to my assistant coaches and I said, okay, this is what they're telling me. What do you think?
What do you
And
think?
and, and my pitching coach goes, if that's what they want, that's what we got to do. I said, okay. So right before the tournament started, I brought the scene. He was a junior, and I said, come here. We're going to make a change here. We're going to, we need his bat. You're struggling a little bit. Just keep your head and you know, just be a team guy. I mean, we're going to make that change because we need more offense. And sure enough, we get in against Coastal Carolina, ranked 10th in the country. We get the lead. I put him in for defense. They end up coming back. We go extra innings. He makes the diving catch. It's the number one play on Sports Center. Number one, top 10 ESPN. We're number one. He's making that catch. And he had been benched weeks before. Good kid, maybe a worser kid doesn't go out there and make that play. Maybe he does, but communicate it as early as you can. But then, but you have time early in the season to kind of feel them out to see what
Right.
works, what doesn't work. Not every kid responds the same way. Sock didn't respond really well. He would have been easier to talk to him. And I probably took my experience from Socrates and used it with the other young man late in the year. So the short answer is don't do it 5 minutes before the game unless there's something that tragically happens or something that just has to change because of
Sure.
something. He got sick or he got hurt in warm-ups or he came late to practice. I've had guys miss batting practice and expect to play, and they're not playing, or they miss the
Yeah. And it goes
bus.
back to the standards. Communications.
Yes,
It's these
right,
5 feet off of each other. I
right.
was just curious what you saw. And I think, going onto the mental performance side is I'm on the other end of it, trying to coach kids through the spiral of the negative self-talk that they attach with. They don't know why they're not playing, or they think they have a shot to be a starter. And then they find out 5 minutes before game time, they're not in a good headspace. So I think
No,
about, my time writing lineups. If I could go back and change how I coached, is I think that communication, the lineups, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they want, this is awesome. The what do you think? You're not giving away your power by asking them, what do you think? You're just bringing them into that duality of they just want to be involved and they just want to know why. And what's our ultimate goal as coaches? I want you to
right.
succeed. I want you to succeed as my player. Well, what do you need to succeed? They need to feel like they're bought in. And you are making me so excited. I want to get back into coaching of like, okay, let's get these 5 pillars rolling, and it's
And the
supposed
other
to be
thing
fun.
is, and when you make a mistake in the game and say, "Listen, I left the pitcher in one time, and I should have took him out, but I trusted him, so I know the next time I go out to tell him, look, I'm taking you out, he's not going to argue with me." But I also would say, "Listen, guys, hey, I made a mistake. I should have taken him out." I mean, I even have a pitching coach come to me and says, "Coach, I should have told you to take him out." I said, no. Well, yeah, you could have told me and I might have listened, but I made the decision, my fault, my mistake. And so I think also admitting your mistakes and always admit your mistakes first. I did learn that. There's a book right here. I got it. It's funny. I have it right here. Uh, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's my favorite book. I read that in fourth grade. They have a teen girl version. The
It's,
best.
I mean, you could take every book I have here and, that's connected to something like this and put it
Yeah.
in the garbage. This is the only one you need. It's
Do
the
you know
only
what
one
my
you need.
favorite takeaway from Dale Carnegie's book is?
What's that?
The three C's. Change my life. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Don't
You get rid
criticize.
of the three C's, your life is eternally different.
Chapter one. I mean, it's chapter one, and that holds true, and that's
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
my gosh. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. I would love to ask you the question I've been asking everybody recently. And the question goes something like this. If you could share your best advice that you received. We used to ask a different question of like, what would you tell your past self? But what is the best piece of advice you've gotten from somebody else?
that's there's a lot of good things I've heard over the years. Um, I would say, I mean, now you kind of put me not on the spot, but I'm trying to think. There was an old Los Angeles Dodgers scout. His name was Gene Kearns. I'm not sure Gene's still with us. But Gene would come to our games and he liked me and we'd talk. And this is back when scouting was like, there wasn't analytics. It was scouting. You went and you looked at the guy and you thought, okay, he has the tools, whatever. Gene Kearns said, look, he told me once, he said, you don't have to do all this complicated stuff. You could just hit ground balls and do situations and just make sure they know what to do in the simplest things. Practice the things that you do the most. And I'm like, okay. So getting complicated with all these fancy things, he told me, he said, look, you don't need to, winning teams don't do that. Winning teams do simple things really well. And that's what I took from Gene. And that's what comes to mind when you ask me that question. Now, when we're done here, I go back and I get my notepad out and I start writing all the things that, that I might have remembered from other people. But that's the one that sticks. And I just remember Gene saying, listen, you don't need to do all that crazy stuff you're doing. Just do this. I did that, and we were always very good on defense, and we were always good at this. Do the simple things well. The things that happen a lot.
Yeah. Which is a full circle moment because it's your book. It's the five things we talked about today. If you can get rid of all the extra fluff, if I could redo my coaching career, if you go back into coaching, I mean, it really can be that simple. It's these five things.
Right. And you can talk about it, and the older you get, the more you do it, the more experience you have to be able to pull from stories and things that you've learned. There's several stories in this book. Uh, my favorite is the Pete Rose story. Pete Rose, who to his non-credit had a rough ending with his life, with the gambling and the whole thing. But when he played, we all wanted to be like Pete Rose. I mean, he hustled, he dove. Pete Rose. We were on Pete Rose slide. It wasn't a call to head first slide. It was we're going to Pete Rose into second or third. We're going to play like Pete. Anyway, so Pete tells this story in 1975. The team's struggling. The manager comes in and says, "Now Pete's been playing the outfield for like 8 years. 8 years outfield. And if you played softball, playing the outfield and then playing the infield is two separate things. Big difference. Now, if you play infield one day and outfield the next, infield, outfield, it's okay. But when you're playing the outfield for like 8 years, so Sparky Anderson, Hall of Fame manager, comes to Pete and says, "Listen, we're bringing this guy up named George Foster. He's an offensive guy. We're not hitting the ball. We need offense. Can you move to third base?" He goes, "When do you need me to move to third base?" Now remember, he's played here for like 8 years, Gold Glove in the outfield. "I need you to move Friday." Pete says it's Tuesday. So Pete leaves a position he played for 8 years, who was really good at it, goes in to play third base, which, if you've ever played baseball, third base is not the easiest spot to play. and they place third, and then they become the big red machine. They win 2 World Series, and Pete Rose plays third base. He didn't worry about his ego. He worried about how we could win more games. And if that meant him moving from left field to third base within 2 or 3 days, then then that's what's gonna happen. Can you do that on your team? Can you change positions? Can you move? Can you go from leading off to batting ninth? Can you go from left field to right field to DH or whatever it is to help the team? And Pete Rose did that. And so if I was coaching today and I had to tell that story, I would tell it in the sense that, look, every one of you are going to be in that situation at some point. Are you going to handle it like Pete Rose did? And you go back and look at the box scores in 1975, and you'll see Rose move from left field to third base. Now, he goes back to left at maybe a game or here, but for the most part, he ends up being their starting third baseman for the next 2 years. And, all because it made the team better. And so that is in there. That's a story in the book. I used that story. There's several, but
Yeah.
that's one that sticks.
Yeah. And stories in our mind, psychologically, we remember stories, we remember analogies. So this has been incredible. We'll be sure to link the book below for everyone listening. What is the best place? Where are you most active on socials?
Well, I do. I mean, LinkedIn is sort of because of business. I try to do something there. The best place to get something from me on a weekly basis is to go to my website, drbarrydavis.com, and subscribe to my email list. And if you're unsure about the book, you'll when you sign up, it'll two chapters will download into your box, and you can read the chapters. And you can also get access to the dissertation as well. But that's the first one. I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, um, Facebook. But that's more of a friend thing, I guess. More
Yeah.
people. But for me, LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter, I use. Twitter is X is at Barry Davis 42, and Instagram is at Dr. Barry Davis 42.
Awesome. And we will link all of those below in the show notes.
And if you need anything from me, just contact me. And if you do get the book and you do read the book, if you could leave a review, that would be phenomenal. My goal is 100. I've been told by all the business people, get 100. I think I'm at 66 right now, and
Okay,
so a little
well,
little bit every day. Have you got the book?
I need to get the book now. We scheduled this podcast too fast. It needs to get here. So I'll be 6-7 on your reviews,
Okay,
which is
perfect.
yeah, it's so great. Dr. Barry Davis, thank you for your time today. This has been incredible. We just appreciate all of your expertise, and your wife, and the mental performance world is just so good to be connected with people who are doing great things. So appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time. Wonderful time. Thank you.